Telescopes have been pointed toward the sky, waiting for the tiniest sign that we are not the only ones looking for a message in light or sound, written by some far-off star. Nevertheless, when it finally came, it was not from a distant galaxy or a hidden civilization. It arrived from a cutting interstellar object, straight through our solar system, a visitor with the name 3I Atlas. For astronomers had been perplexed for months by its emerald glow, its pulses of energy, and its disregard for everything we thought we knew about comets. However, now the mystery has deepened beyond imagination. The world's instruments have verified that Atlas is not emitting radiation randomly. It is sending and broadcasting directed energy pulses with a straight line upon Mars. And in an event that has left even the most skeptical scientists speechless, Mars itself has responded. For the first time in human history, we are witnessing what appears to be a conversation between a moving object from beyond the stars and a neighboring planet that we thought was dead and silent. And if this is true, then our comprehension of the universe, Mars, and our place in it will never be the same again. It began quietly, as many findings occur using data that appeared too bizarre to be considered serious. Astronomers had already known that it pulsed in regular intervals, its emerald glow dimming and brightening every 173 minutes, with a rhythm so precise it could not be dismissed as coincidence. But then came a pulse that was different. It was not dispersed elsewhere, similar to the others, spreading into the void but focused, compressed into a beam aimed directly at Mars. Orbiters immediately circling the red planet registered the spike, recording bursts of radiation powerful enough to enter the thin Martian atmosphere and light it up in shimmering green for several minutes. At first it was dismissed as an unusual angle, a flare or an anomaly of solar tampering, but when it happened again, with exactly the same duration, the same direction, and the same power, the conclusion was inescapable. Atlas was sending a message. It was not accidental. It was not blind. It was directed. For the first time throughout history, there was evidence that a target had been selected by the interstellar visitor for its signal, and Mars had been selected. The response came not in days or weeks, but almost right away. Satellites orbiting Mars began to record electromagnetic bursts rising from the planet itself, with corresponding pulses to Atlas's frequency, but carrying variations, as if not simply reflecting the original signal but modifying it. Scientists naturally at first thought these were echoes, reverberations bouncing through Mars's thin magnetosphere. However, a more in-depth examination demonstrated the contrary. The pulses were delayed by precise intervals, slightly altered in frequency, organized in a manner that suggested intentional modulation. Even more shocking, Earth-based telescopes began detecting faint harmonics bouncing back across space, as if Mars were amplifying the signal and returning it. To those who studied the data, it was as though Atlas had asked and Mars had answered in kind, repeating the language in its own voice. Suddenly, a world that was once thought to be empty and silent had become a participant in an interplanetary dialogue. Its thin skies and dusty ground were now vibrating with the energy of a message that came from beyond the horizon. The mystery deepened when seismic monitors, left behind by Mars missions long past, began to register something unheard of before. The tremors were not chaotic but rhythmic, perfectly synchronized with the pulses from Atlas. Deep into the planet's atmosphere and mantle, these vibrations, as if the very crust of Mars had transformed into a resonant instrument and sung in harmony with the visitor from another galaxy. The frequencies, even more unsettling, mapped onto geometric shapes when translated into spectrograms, spirals, hexagons, and triangles identical to the patterns of light that astronomers had already observed in the glowing Atlas coma. This was not coincidence. The ruby planet did more than just reflect energy. It was responding, speaking through the ground itself with its own voice. For some researchers, this hinted at the possibility that there is something beneath the Martian surface, an ancient structure, a buried ocean, or even a long inactive system brought into operation by the call of Atlas. Others went further, suggesting that Mars itself was alive in ways we had never imagined, resonating like a vast organism stirred by a signal from the stars. Whatever the truth, it was indisputable. Mars was responding. The implications of the exchange could not be contained. As Atlas pulsed and Mars reacted, Earth started to feel the connection. Radio telescopes around the globe picked up faint harmonics identical to the Martian echoes, static patterns embedded that matched Atlas's signal, but were transformed by the red planet's response. Independent researchers posted their results online, spectrograms revealing eerie geometries concealed within the bursts, only to see their accounts mysteriously vanish hours later. Governments did not provide any explanations. NASA didn't say anything. And yet the truth spread. No longer was humanity a bystander. We were watching a cosmic conversation not meant for us but clearly showing up in sight. And as the patterns grew stronger, as Mars's signals became clearer, the haunting realization took hold. Whatever Atlas had asked, Mars had answered, and its echoes were already reaching Earth. Phobos and Deimos, the two small moons of Mars, had always been regarded as insignificant, no more than captured lifeless asteroids, rocks that orbit a barren world. Yet when Atlas's signal reached Mars and the planet responded, something extraordinary took place. Instruments on board orbiters detected Phobos emitting electromagnetic bursts that reflected radiation, perfectly in sync with Mars's pulses, like a relay node enhancing the conversation. Deimos, fainter and further out, gave a different response, glowing intermittently with an emerald sheen that Earth-based telescopes captured as flashes against the black of space. These were more than just reflections of sunlight. They were timed and deliberate. The moons, long thought irrelevant, had suddenly become involved participants in the dialogue. Scientists scrambled to explain how such small, inert bodies were interacting with the signal, but the simplest explanation was also the most unsettling. The whole Martian system had been awakened, as if every orbiting body and rock had been waiting for the call from Atlas. At first, rovers on Mars seemed unaffected, continuing their daily tasks of measuring dust, capturing images and transmitting data. However, as the pulses intensified one by one, their feeds began to fail. The initial sender transmitted files tainted with green streaks across the static. Another sent a final message, a hazy view of the horizon surrounded by an artificial light before becoming inactive. Earth's engineers fought to regain control, issuing one command after another, but the machines remained silent. Then came the most disturbing detail. One rover transmitted a single burst of data moments before it stopped working. A stream of binary code that, when decoded, formed repeating prime numbers identical to the patterns hidden in Atlas's pulses. The conclusion was impossible to ignore. The rovers had not randomly failed. They had been pulled into the resonance, forced to repeat the exact same mathematical signature linking Mars and Atlas. Our mechanical explorers had, in their final moments, become part of the signal. Earth woke up shortly after the rovers stopped talking. It began to intercept strange messages sent across the universe's background noise. Radio telescopes in Australia, South Africa, and Chile picked up faint bursts that matched both Atlas's frequency and the Martian echoes. At first, they appeared as static, but careful examination showed sequences repeating in prime numbers, just like those transmitted by the rovers. Even more troubling was the realization that the signals grew stronger when Mars rotated some parts into view, as if particular sections of the Martian surface were acting as transmission nodes. Independent astronomers rushed to publish their findings, only for their work to vanish hours later from servers, websites, and forums. Still, there was enough evidence to confirm the unimaginable. The dialogue between Mars and Atlas was no longer restricted to space. It was now reaching Earth, and if we were able to hear it, perhaps, just perhaps, it was meant for us too. As the dialogue intensified, the skies themselves became a canvas for Atlas's message. Observers reported seeing shimmering patterns ripple across the atmosphere of Mars, visible even through Earth's telescopes. Spirals, ellipses, and hexagonal grids shimmered like huge, brief constellations etched in light, making brief appearances before vanishing. Satellite imagery verified the displays, showing they aligned precisely with the rhythm of the pulses exchanged between Mars and Atlas. The geometries were not random. They carried ratios that matched mathematical constants, golden spirals, and even symmetries found in the structure of architecture throughout human societies. The implied meaning was eerie. Atlas's message, amplified by Mars, was now being displayed not just electromagnetically, but written across the skies in symbols that spoke a universal language. Humanity, once a passive observer, was now staring at signs that seemed designed to be recognized not just by Mars but by us. And the realization spread like wildfire. This was not a blip in physics. It was communication. As the signals intensified, Seismic activity on Mars reached levels never before recorded. What had once been a still and frozen world suddenly pulsed with quakes that reverberated across its crust, timed perfectly with the communications from Atlas. Scientists realized that these tremors were not accidental shifts in rock, but structured vibrations traveling deep into the mantle, as though the planet itself had become a resonant instrument, amplifying the signal from across the stars. The most shocking discovery came when the seismic wave spectrograms were translated into visual data. The patterns matched the geometric symbols long observed in the emerald light of Atlas. Spirals, triangles, and hexagons etched into the heartbeat of Mars. For the first time, experts were compelled to consider a possibility that bordered on the unthinkable. Mars was more than just echoing the call of Atlas. It was participating, shaping the signal with its own geological voice. Something beneath its crust had been activated, and the red planet was no longer merely a passive target. It was alert. Then came the phenomenon visible not only through telescopes but to the human eye. Amateurs and astronomers, both stargazers and observers, began reporting faint emerald-colored light rising over Mars, shimmering like auroras designed to be organic. These luminous veils spread across the Martian atmosphere, curling into patterns that echoed the spirals and geometries of Atlas's signal.